it is the first installment of the new DC universe. It is Superman, directed by James Gunn.
Right.
Now, you guys should know I'm not a James Gunn fan.
Mm-hmm.
I said it in our 100th episode. I wasn't like saying that just for shock value or joking. Like when he was announced as the head of DC, there were a couple of days I contemplated either ending this show or leaving it. But then, time moves on. We're just like, there's still other stuff. But I've been very pessimistic about this whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and then look, we could be a show that just like so many other shows, preferably ones that, especially ones that have the hashtag restore the Snyderverse, that just yell and complain about this movie. But I figured I'd do something a little bit different on this episode that we've never done before, which is I do have something I did prepare, and I'll let you see. No,
okay.
Let me know if you can see it or not.
Yeah, you have a presentation here.
I do have a presentation. Are you able to see it? Or
yes, I can see it. James Gunn's Superman. Why to be hopeful and worried.
Yes. So I just tried to take my personal opinion out of it. I tried to look for both reasons why you should be excited for it and why you should also be worried about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I say worried for the end because once I say why you should be worried, you'll understand why I can't get excited for this movie.
Yeah.
So I did put this together. And, by the way, when I'm going through it, feel free to interrupt at any time. Feel free to interrupt.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll just go through this. Why to be hopeful? Because, look, while I am not excited for this movie, there are some positive signs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I should also bring up before we get into it. What has is the trailer a reason to be hopeful or not hopeful? Because they did release a trailer.
Yes.
A few weeks ago. I don't know if you've seen it or not.
Yeah, I've seen it.
The trailer does exactly what I thought it would, which is nothing. For a movie with the kind of concerns I'm having, a musical trailer with no dialogue, it kind of left where we were before, which is that it really tells us nothing. So that's why the trailer is pretty insignificant. We're really not going to know much from a trailer until they put out one that has dialogue and gives a hint of what the story will be.
Right.
All right. So why to be hopeful? This, unlike what some other YouTube shows are going to do about they screwed over Henry Cavill, restore the Snyderverse. The thing that works in this movie's favor is that it's a new beginning. This Superman movie is a fresh start without the baggage of the DCEU. And I think it needs to be said. I think we got to point out, okay? Do you remember like a week before Black Adam came out when Warner Brothers just decided, you know what? Our marketing, we're going to advertise that Henry Cavill's in it. Remember? And remember how no one cared?
Right.
It's just, we had to learn the hard way that continuing the DCEU because of the success of Wonder Woman was a mistake. But now that this movie this version is a clean slate, there's no baggage associated with this Superman.
Yeah.
So this Superman has unlimited potential. He could be a great character. It's just a fresh start is always great. It's a clean slate, and that is something honestly that DC movies have needed for a while.
Yeah.
All right. This is a big one. It will feature Clark Kent. Now, the biggest mistake of Man of Steel was having him in the suit most of the movie and saving the traditional version of Clark Kent until the very end. And I swear, if there was one decision that could have drastically changed that movie, I do think it would have been having Clark Kent, the traditional Clark Kent with the glasses throughout the whole movie instead of just him flying around in the suit most of the movie.
Yeah.
Now, in the TV versions, like Superman and Lois, they spend most of their time focusing on the character of Clark Kent, which is when he's the most relatable, just like Peter Parker, right? When you watch a Spider-Man movie, he's not in the suit the whole time. Peter Parker is what makes that character relatable. Spider-Man is the fantasy. It's just like with Superman. Clark Kent, he's just an average guy. I would almost argue more relatable than Peter Parker. He's just an average guy, and Superman is the fantasy. That's the part of it. But the part you relate to is Clark Kent.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to be based on some very beloved comic books. One of them, the one that James Gunn has constantly referenced, is All-Star Superman, which ran from 2005 to 2008. It was by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely, and it's an Elseworld story which focuses on a dying Superman who's trying to prepare the world to go on without him. Another one that this movie is going to be based on is Superman for All Seasons, a 1998 series by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale, which was a companion piece to John Byrne's Man of Steel, which was Superman's official origin story in the comics from 1986 to 2003. Now, why is this storyline so significant? It was the main inspiration for the Smallville TV show, which, outside of the Christopher Reeve movies, is the most beloved version of the character.
Mm-hmm.
The other comic books it's going to be based on are Kingdom Come. And I don't know if you can see, David Corenswet's Superman logo is straight from the Kingdom Come comic book, except they replaced the yellow with the black.
Yeah.
So that's a 1996 series by Mark Waid and Alex Ross, and it focuses on an older Superman coming out of retirement to lead the classic DC heroes against the next generation of heroes who are reckless and violent. Now, they do have listed a box set, which they did for the Batman as well. Here is a box set of the comic books that the movies are based on. And in that box set includes 1986's Superman, Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan, which was the last Superman story before the characters rebooted by John Byrne in Man of Steel. And that Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow graphic novel also contains the storyline For the Man Who Has Everything, which is also written by Moore and by Dave Gibbons, who did the art, where Mongol shows Superman what his life would be like if he never left Krypton. So it's going to be one of those two storylines. I don't know which one it is, if it's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow or For the Man Who Has Everything, but one of those two is one of the inspirations for the movie.
Okay.
So why should we be worried? Which I love that picture, right?
Yeah.
Why to be worried? Superman with the kryptonite.
Worried. Yeah.
Yes. Uh-oh.
What are this movie's kryptonite?
Yes. The main reason to be worried is the guy behind the camera. That's James Gunn, who is the writer and director of the movie. Now, in the superhero genre, Gunn has only worked on lesser-known characters, which some may say could be beneficial. However, he's never worked on any character with pressure like Superman. Like, no one cared before if Guardians of the Galaxy sucked. No one cared before if the Suicide Squad sucked, because a lot of people already hated the last Suicide Squad movie.
Yeah.
And also his films heavily feature his humor, which most agree wouldn't fit for Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look at Gunn's previous DC and Marvel work, okay? Just go down this list. Guardians of the Galaxy, terrible. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, terrible. The Suicide Squad, terrible. Peacemaker, terrible. Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, terrible. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the best of the trilogy, but still, terrible. Creature Commandos, terrible. Everyone is very much like a tone that won't fit for Superman, and look, rightly or wrongly, he has put himself in a specific box, and he needs to get out of that box for Superman, and I don't know if he'll be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing working against it is that James Gunn is not just the writer and director. He has unlimited power because he's the co-head of DC Studios. He can do whatever he wants. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the previous examples of when this has failed with DC, you had Christopher Nolan with The Dark Knight Rises. Now, some people would say, but Nolan did Batman Begins with The Dark Knight. But when he didn't have as much power with those movies like he did with The Dark Knight Rises. And one story they told about was that Warner Brothers told him he had to put the Batmobile in Batman Begins because he didn't want to at first.
Right.
And you also had Zack Snyder with Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman, which David Goyer, who was the writer of Man of Steel, talked about how Warner Brothers had some concerns about Man of Steel, but Christopher Nolan, who was a producer, told them, no, just let them do what they wanted. And we saw how that turned out. And also Zack Snyder then went, and when he was given Batman versus Superman, I'm sorry, guys, it's the truth. He went and made a 3-hour R-rated version, which everyone knew wouldn't be releasable. So it wasn't until the last minute they had to go back and change stuff. And we got that hobbled together 2.5-hour mess that was put into theaters. And recently, we had Todd Phillips with Joker Filet Do, where they let him do whatever he wanted because Joker made $1 billion and was nominated for Best Picture and got Joaquin Phoenix an Oscar. So there's that. Also, when looking at DC Studios as a whole, Peter Safran is going to produce Superman. Now, again, let's look at Safran's previous work with DC. Aquaman, terrible. Shazam? Let's give it to them for that. I don't know how. I don't know how they took the worst superhero of all time and made one of the best DCEU movies, because that's what it was. I don't know how. It shocks me somehow that Shazam became one of the best DCEU movies.
Yeah.
But you continue down the list. The Suicide Squad, terrible. Peacemaker, terrible. Shazam, Fury of the Gods, terrible. Aquaman, The Lost Kingdom, terrible. Creature Commandos, terrible. And also, Gunn has said that this version of Superman is going to be very inspired by the Silver Age, which ran in the comic books from 1956 to 1970. Now, the Golden Age of Superman, which is when the character was first introduced by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, that was a very grounded version of the character. The really only sci-fi thing about Superman was Superman himself. And even then, he couldn't fly. He leaped tall buildings in a single bound. So it was very grounded. It was him fighting gangsters. It was him going to like these evil business people who were screwing over their employees. It was kind of like what we associate Green Arrow with now. He was the champion of the people.
Yeah.
But the Silver Age is when the character very heavily leaned into science fiction, and when I personally feel he was the least relatable. Out of all the different eras, I think that is when Superman was the least relatable. And if I could describe, like, for non-comic book readers, what is Silver Age Superman like? He's kind of like the version from the Super Friends cartoon. That's pretty much what Silver Age Superman was. And look, the Silver Age introduced a lot of great concepts to the Superman mythos that are great additions, and I love having them. Supergirl, Krypto, Metallo, Brainiac, Bizarro. However, back in the day, they were presented as very silly and very goofy, which obviously with James Gunn in charge is a very big concern. Now let's talk about a character who needs to be avoided. Because remember how I mentioned how the movie in the box set brings up whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow comic book storyline? That storyline features the goofiest Superman character as the main villain. He is Mr. Mxyzptlk, an imp from the fifth dimension who annoys Superman. He can be sent back to his home dimension by saying his name backwards, Kiltipsism. Now, Gunn Rain directing the film means, unlike any other filmmaker, there's a chance he could use Mr. Mxyzptlk, especially if he's adapting whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which would make the DCU already have jumped the shark. Do not use Mr. Mxyzptlk. And some people may be saying, what? They wouldn't use that. Well, in Peacemaker, which we know is canon to the DCU, they mentioned Batmite, which is basically Batman's version of Mr. Mxyzptlk.
Yeah.
All right. Now, while I love the storylines that they chose to adapt, those storylines are not new reader friendly. Gunn is rebooting Superman by adapting 3 comic book storylines that expects the audience to already know a lot about Superman, his supporting cast and their history. The only exception being for All Seasons, which was the origin story. And these 3 stories are about Superman towards the end of his career, and Gunn is using them to introduce a younger version of the character. And I do get a little bit concerned that the fact that he's doing these stories will make it so that a new fan won't be able to just come in cold. Like, they'll have had to have watched like every Superman movie to understand what's going on, because it's not going to easily introduce the characters and who they are.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about Gunn's mistakes as the co-CEO so far. One of them is beginning the DC universe with guaranteed flops. Clayface is now going to be the 3rd DCU film after Superman and Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which is just like, that's going to flop. As the 3rd movie, that is a guaranteed flop. And one of the other projects Gunn has announced was a movie of The Authority. Again, that's going to flop. Like, remember, I know Gunn is trying to be like, well, we did Guardians of the Galaxy, but Guardians of the Galaxy came in 6 years after Iron Man, and after the Avengers showed that the MCU was a well-running machine. Just going from Superman, Supergirl, Clayface, that movie will flop, and The Authority will flop as one of their first movies. Now, one thing that James Gunn was involved with was the end of The Flash. And that film originally ended with Michael Keaton's Bruce Wayne instead of George Clooney's. And I do find it concerning that the reason for the change was simply because Gunn wanted to see how many Batman actors could be added to the film. Because originally you had it with Michael Keaton, and then once David Zaslav and Discovery took over and they had plans for bringing back Henry Cavill as Superman with Black Adam, they decided that they wanted to do a new ending where they would have Keaton, Henry Cavill, Gal Gadot, and they also would show Supergirl to show that she, just like Keaton's Batman, survived the events of The Flash. But then Gunn decided that to change that ending because he didn't want to end with Cavill and Gadot to hint that they would be coming back at all, which I find an odd choice because everyone knew they weren't coming back. So instead of just going back and doing the Michael Keaton ending, which made narrative sense, they got George Clooney only because he wanted to do fan service and see how many Batman he could fit in there.
Mm.
He's also creating confusion about what is canon to this new DC universe. Instead of doing a full reboot, Gunn is carrying over some elements of the DCEU like Peacemaker and Blue Beetle. He also, now, back when he announced the full slate of the DCEU, he said that the events of The Flash would reset the DCU, but it appears that movie's not canon. So we've already created some confusion there. Gunn has also said that references made in the projects would make parts of the DCEU canon. So it sounded like it was a reboot, but if they reference the first Wonder Woman movie, even though we've rebooted, that Wonder Woman movie kind of becomes canon. It's just, there's created so much confusion about what is now canon to this DC universe because Gunn is bringing stuff over like Peacemaker.
Yeah. I will say that slide is the most worrisome to me because it all just makes it seem very messy.
Yeah. So, another one mistake he's made is the title The Brave and the Bold. Now, that is a title that may be a fun reference to comic book fans. However, it doesn't tell the average audience member that it's their Batman movie. And also, the title The Brave and the Bold, it's not relevant to the storyline it's adapting. I mean, and I know it's a title, but like, even when we did our DC special, you didn't know Brave and the Bold was supposed to be a Batman movie.
Right, yeah.
So they need to change that title. And this was just like, it's just going to be, this final one just shows we're in the same place we were, except now everything's connected, movies, TV, and games. We don't have another version to save the ship, the sinking ship. Gunn has said that announcing a project does not guarantee it will actually happen. Here's his quote via Threads. Just to clarify, I said everything we originally announced was still in development, not that still coming. That all depends on the scripts. We'll never put a half-assed script in production just because it was announced. So, The Authority, no guarantee it will happen. Brave and the Bold, no guarantee will happen. And it's just like, why are you announcing projects if you don't have a finished script? What is the point of that? It's just, it feels like the old DCEU back when they announced so much stuff that never happened.
Yeah.
So here are my predictions for Superman. I think that the movie is going to be criticized for Gunn's humor and not being easily accessible to new fans. I don't think it's going to be overwhelmingly positive. My guess is going to be mixed to negative. Probably more like in range of the first Aquaman movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow will suffer from the Superman criticisms. Clayface is a guaranteed flop, and I think anything before The Brave and the Bold will flop at the box office. And here's what I'm going to say. If The Brave and the Bold is not one of the next 3 movies to follow Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, WB is going to scrap the DCEU due to the film's underperforming. So I don't think they're going to drag this out like they did the DCEU. I think all it's going to take is 3 flops and they're done.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thoughts about Superman, the DCU. There's really not much to say about the trailer. I thought, again, the music trailer was all stuff we'd seen in Superman Returns and Man of Steel. I thought the crypto stuff was corny, but whatever. So I guess after that, I'll turn to you, and who knows what. We'll get your thoughts. What are your thoughts about James Gunn's Superman and I guess the overall DCU now that is coming soon to a theater near you?
Well, I have my own presentation, and here's why you should be even more worried. No, honestly, my only real thoughts was that because the trailer doesn't give a ton, but I think my only real thoughts was that the trailer does at least hint to me style choices that I personally like more than Man of Steel. But that's about it. I really don't know how. I do worry that it will not be as grounded as something like Smallville, and that it would be more like Superman but Guardians of the Galaxy. And I love the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise. I think it works as a sci-fi franchise, but that's different than saying that I think that would work for Superman, which I don't think it would at all. So yeah, the worry would be more that it's like a Guardians of the Galaxy style sci-fi, like in like a sci-fi comic book movie, but it's Superman this time. That would be a mistake. I do think I'd be maybe a little more hopeful that even if it is something like that, it could be something that is generally well liked by a lot of people in general audiences. But I wouldn't have much hope that that would translate into a healthy long-term franchise that's setting up an entire universe. So that is where I would start to think that it would fall apart. But I guess my overall takeaway is that I feel hopeful that I'd like it more than that I would say probably going to like it more than Man of Steel is with as little as we know, but that is saying so unbelievably little. Just because I think on a basic stylistic level, I can get behind it more than I can get behind Man of Steel. But that's as much positivity as I can say about it at the moment, because I just don't have a lot of information, and a lot of the development does still seem sloppy in a way where it feels like what's being marketed as like this breath of fresh air, fresh start feels too good to be true. It feels like it's more than likely going to be a sloppier thing than that. So
yeah. So I guess by this time next year, do you think that Superman will be looked at positively or negatively? If you had to just take a guess of what you know now.
If I had to really place a bet on it, I think that something like what I said, where like I don't do we want to do Rotten Tomatoes score bets on like what we think it'll be? I think yours would be lower than mine as well. But I think what it would be, I think that it will get like 68% on Rotten Tomatoes. So like a fairly low positive. Which is to say that I think that arguably, does that mean that Superman is viewed positively?
It's kind of more mixed at that point.
Yeah, but yeah. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think right now I'm guessing about 62.
Okay. Yeah.
Like what was Aquaman? Because I think it's kind of going to be something like that.
Yeah, like 60 or something. I don't
know. Aquaman has like 65, so I think about probably 62.
Okay.
But like even now, like Aquaman is viewed pretty negatively.
Yes. Yeah, that changes. Well, I guess if it were in that range of like, I would say my range of guesses would be like 68 to maybe 75. But that's not like a universal acclaim kind. Even 75 would not be like a universal acclaim where you're looking at people calling it like a classic Superman movie that like reinvigorates a franchise. So even if by the end of the year people are like, that Superman movie was pretty good, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate into, you know, what it needs to translate into. So I guess I would say that Superman would be viewed about the same as it currently is. Basically in that I think it might not do a lot at all, which is to say it might not do enough to make people think like this character is just bad. But I would say probably the current sentiment is like, this is obviously of important major character in fiction, but a lot of people feel the character seems silly or that it won't work today. And a lot of people agree that it's a really, like, a lot of people see the good in it. So I think Superman feels like kind of a mixed character on some level, mostly liked. And I think this movie probably will not do a lot to change it unless we're completely wrong and it's just an absolutely amazing movie that does do all the things it set out to. But my guess would be that it would do almost nothing to change the current view of Superman. But maybe you think that it might actually damage it more than I do.
I mean, look, we're coming off of like this will be the third attempt in less than 20 years to try to launch a film franchise again after Superman Returns, Man of Steel, and now this one.
Mm-hmm.
Overall, like if they want to have a DC universe, this has got to be like the first Iron Man level. Like this has got to be No Way Home level. Like it has pressure, rightfully so. This needs to be one of the best superhero movies ever made.
Yeah.
Because if it's like okay, that's not going to be enough this time. Especially with how the genre is right now. Like that's going to kill it. That's going to kill this whole universe. And so I guess I'll ask you, what do you think? Now that we're getting close to Superman, what do you think about the whole DC universe as a whole under James Gunn? Because I don't think it's gonna. Now that we've heard about what projects we're gonna get and we've seen a little bit about Superman, I don't think it's gonna be a success. I think 7 years, I'm giving it max before it ends, and that's me being generous. I think 3 flops, it's done.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what are your thoughts about the future of the DC universe now that it's here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I know so little now, and I have so little information that I really can't say anything with confidence, but I would say that I think maybe a hopeful part of me thinks that decisions were made to maybe moderately improve things from where it was, but I don't think that enough is being done to really invigorate it and like breathe completely new life into it and feel like we're really rebooting this. And some of the things you presented made it clearer that it's just very sloppy at the current moment. So I would venture to say that while some okay movies might come out of this, it won't be groundbreaking enough to give it legs for the coming like decade. I think it will run out of steam very quickly because the movies will be just too okay to give it a longer life. But that is still saying that I think it might be better than some previous DCEU movies.
Yeah. So I guess the last question before we get into Superman, I've touched about this a little. Do you think, because comparing it to the DCEU, which we know they tried course correcting many times,
Mm-hmm.
if James Gunn's Superman is a critical disappointment, if Supergirl is a critical disappointment, will they try course correcting? Will they spend a decade trying to course correct like last time? Or will they pull the plug fairly quickly this time compared to last time? Because last time, the DCU lasted for a decade where they
Yeah.
kept trying to course correct. Do you see them trying to course correct? Or under David Zaslav, who cancels movies like that, will they scrap it?
Yeah, maybe it'll just all vanish when like if it does really poorly. Like it might just all be like this entire thing is gone. I guess I could see that, like that they won't. Um, but again, like I feel like continuing to try, even though they've failed and course correcting along the way, would be a mistake, and they make mistakes all the time. So like, seems almost equally likely to me.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to try. I think they learned their lesson last time because even with Black Adam, that bringing back Henry Cavill wasn't good enough. The Flash bringing back Keaton and Affleck wasn't good enough. I think that they kind of learned their lesson. Like once you lose them, like the DCEU, it died with Batman versus Superman. That killed it. There was no recovery after that.
Yeah.
So just like how Sony pretty much died with Morbius. Like there was no recovery after that. So
Yeah.